Good evening and welcome. You're watching The Chase, Zimbabwe's premier current affairs program. Hello, I'm Andy Hodges, and this is ZTN Prime. Are you a patriot? Do you believe that you are patriotic? The Criminal Law Codification and Reform Amendment Bill, commonly known as the Patriotic Bill, criminalizing the willful damaging of the sovereignty and national integrity of Zimbabwe, now awaits presidential assent. The bill, however, has not been without controversy, dividing opinions both locally and abroad. Critics of the bill allege that the law is deliberately designed to limit freedom of assembly, freedom of information, as well as freedom of the press. Opposition activists say the law was crafted to punish civil society organizations and political opponents of the ruling ZANU-PF party. Those supporting the bill claim that such a piece of legislation was overdue, as it was necessary to protect the country, which they say is under siege, both from externally and internally. On top of all of this, some legal experts say that the bill is ambiguously worded, confusing and difficult to grasp. Our topic, new laws. Does Zim have an ace up its sleeve? Join me and my guest tonight live on The Chase. Welcome back to The Chase, Zimbabwe's premier current affairs program. This is ZTN Prime, broadcasting to you from our studios in Harare, Zimbabwe. Now, to discuss new laws, does Zim have an ace up its sleeve? I'm privileged and welcome to the studio Zimbabwe's Justice, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Minister, Honourable Ziyambi. Minister, welcome to The Chase, sir.
Thank you, Andy, and good evening.
Now, to our viewers watching ZTN Prime, we'd like to hear from you, so please join this discussion via our Facebook page, In Papers TV Network, or via our Twitter handle at ZTN Prime. Your views and comments are special and welcome to us. Please note that all views expressed on The Chase are those of our guests and do not reflect the views of Zimbabwe Newspapers 1980 Limited, or in fact, ZTN Prime. Minister, let's start off with a baseline. First of all, let me state that other countries around the world do have some form of patriotic bill. I'll give you an example. In America, there's one called the Logan Act. That's a federal law that criminalizes negotiations by unauthorized American citizens with foreign governments who have a dispute with the United States. The intent behind the act is to prevent negotiations from undermining the government's position. Now, bearing this in mind, possibly you could give us a bit of background. What was the motivation behind the crafting of our own patriotic bills?
Thank you, Andy. The motivation really behind the crafting of this bill is we have had individuals going outside the country, engaging foreign governments or their proxies or agencies, discussing, for instance, trade boycott against our country or imposition of sanctions, whether you term them targeted or untargeted. And from our experience, those trade boycotts or sanctions, they injure the generality of our people. So the motivation really was, let's look at our code, at crimes against the state, and see if this is adequately covered. So we went into the code, we looked at the crime of terrorism, treason, crime of training bandits to come and invade the country, and we could not find a specific fit for this kind of behavior, which is criminalized in other jurisdictions. Hence, we decided that we needed to amend our criminal code under Section 22 and expand it to include this particular section. Basically, people have said a lot of things that are totally false. The essential elements of this crime is you must be a Zimbabwean citizen, you go outside the country, you engage a foreign government or its proxy or its agents, you discuss about trade boycott or imposition of sanctions, knowing fully well that what you are discussing will result in injuring the sovereignty or national interests of Zimbabwe. So the essential elements are that you must engage a foreign agent. And you have full knowledge of what you are doing.
So it's intent, if I can call it
Yes, intent. That it will injure the majority of Zimbabweans or the sovereignty of Zimbabwe.
Minister, we'll get into that, but let me just ask you this. Like, let's talk about the criticism first, and we can talk about the benefits, of course, of the bill to the country. Critics allege that the bill is a violation of citizens' rights to freedom of expression, speech, and association. How do you respond to that?
That's totally false. You do not have absolute rights against all others. What we are simply saying is, you go out there, you engage a foreign government with a view of ensuring that sanctions are imposed against your country. Now, those critics are saying, I have a right to do what I want, regardless of what will happen to my neighbor who will be affected by the sanctions. So we are saying our constitution does not give absolute rights. There are limitations to certain rights. And we are saying you cannot claim rights that will result in injury to the generality of the population just because you are a Zimbabwean who is claiming. The law does not say that.
Okay. One area that I think citizens and people seem to be confused about is this definition of what patriotic or unpatriotic is. And really what constitutes patriotism. And furthermore, who actually defines it? Because the argument, of course, is that being a patriot is being defined, in essence, by the ruling parties and EPF. All right. So does the bill clearly spell out what would be an offence under it? What would be termed a patriot? What would be termed unpatriotic? Because of course you're the Minister of Justice. You know, when you go to court, you have to prove what patriotism and unpatriotic actually means to the letter of the law.
Actually, in the bill does not use the term patriot. The bill would define what is a crime in terms of the amendment that was put forward. Like I alluded to you, if you partake in a meeting with a foreign government or its proxy or agent, knowing fully well that the discussions that you are undertaking and what you are contributing to and what you are urging to the foreign government to do will result in a trade boycott or sanctions. That is what is being criminalized.
So there was nowhere does it say patriotic or unpatriotic. It says if you do this, those are the penalties you're going to get.
Yes.
Okay.
So that is what the prosecutor must prove, that you attended, you knew. If you didn't know, but when you go to the meeting, you then became aware and you contributed and you urged the foreign agent, you still be guilty of that offense.
So from what you were then describing, then, you know, critics again are saying that they believe the bill is vague in its wording and open to interpretation. But what you're saying is that the bill seems to be clearly defined about some of these things, and that because one of the fears, of course, is you get to a court of law and they sort of say the judge or the court has to interpret itself what a certain clause means.
Actually, and when we were in Parliament, that was the argument that the opposition were giving, that you are taking away mens rea. And I said, okay, let's read the wording of the bill and tell me where mens rea is not.
Right, explain mens rea for those who are not.
Is the criminal intent.
Okay.
The argument was, I may attend a meeting without any criminal intent. I'm innocent.
I'm just invited.
I'm just invited. Right. So we said, okay, let's improve it. And when we improved it to say you knew, you partook in that meeting, right, and you contributed to the discussion to impose sanctions. So we made sure that with the contribution of everyone.
From the opposition?
From the opposition.
In fact, I believe it was Honourable Tendai Biti.
Yes, it was Tendai Biti who said, let's do this. And I said, I agree. For as long as we criminalize that conduct of going to a foreign government and behaving in that way, that will result in injury to the sovereignty of our nation. I'm happy. And we did that. That's the reason why when we were voting, some of them actually did not vote. That's why it was 99 to 17, because they realized that the way it was couched, it was now very difficult for them to argue
Okay, because this is what mens rea. Mens rea is intention rather than ignorance.
Ignorance,
yes. Okay.
Yes.
Now, so let's talk about this requirement for the National Prosecuting Authority, NPA, to institute criminal proceedings based on discretion. Doesn't that testify to a little bit of vagueness of the bill? Because why should the NPA be able to apply their own discretion on when to charge someone?
In fact, they do not have to apply discretion. We removed that. What the MPA will look at, did you attend the meeting?
Okay.
Did you participate? Did you urge the imposition of sanctions? And it's actually the MP that you have to prove beyond reasonable doubt that you did 1, 2, 3, 4. So the law does not take away any...
Isn't that the hard part? Because you yourself, you're a lawyer. You know, proving intent is very difficult, isn't it?
It's not difficult if you attended a meeting.
But that intent of I knew it was criminal, participating. But if I attended, didn't say anything, but you need to prove intent that I went there knowing that these sanctions would be there or that they were going to talk about this.
If you attend a meeting...
And say nothing. I don't contribute, I just attend.
And you didn't contribute, it might be technically very difficult. If you didn't know, you didn't have any invitation...
Because how do you prove I didn't know?
Yes.
Yeah.
But if you attended...
And spoke openly.
Okay. And you urged the foreign government to impose a trade boycott or sanctions.
Then that would fall under the law.
Yes.
So that's why I'm saying that this grey area, that if I did attend the meeting and maybe I didn't know, to prove that I knew, to prove I had intent to contribute is very difficult, as long as I don't say anything.
Yes.
Okay, let's accept that. Now, many people may fear, Minister, that the lack of clarity in the wording of the bill, or the alleged lack of clarity in the bill, may result in conviction of innocent individuals possibly targeted by the government, for example. This is the criticism that critics are telling us. What assurances can you tell Zimbabwean citizens that they're protected from false prosecution or malicious prosecution?
In fact, the way the bill is crafted, it protects anyone who does not partake in that conduct that is being criminalized.
Okay.
You need to attend the meeting.
Right.
You need to participate actively,
right.
Encourage the foreign government to impose, and the foreign government goes on to impose.
Okay. Oh, so all of those have to be met?
Yes.
So if you don't meet any of those, you can't really be arrested or convicted under the bill?
Yes.
So that's the assurance you're giving citizens?
Yes. So if you did all that, knowing fully well that this will injure my country, in other words, you are not patriotic. Okay. If you bring sanctions to a country, you bring a trade boycott to a country...
Which harms the citizens.
Which harm the citizens.
Okay.
Then that is what we are criminalizing. We are saying that is a crime against the state.
Now, what I feel or know is going to happen, of course, is possibly foreign nations will cry out and say this is a very undemocratic bill. As I said, it's potential to restrict freedoms. So do you believe that this may harm the government's efforts to re-engage, the engagement efforts that the President Idi Mnangagwa is actually going through, and successfully? I mean, he just came from the UK from the King's coronation, and of course the cricket team is going to Lords to play cricket, so engagement is working. Do you think this may harm that re-engagement effort with the international community?
Not at all. The contents of the bill do not target anyone. It targets criminals who undertake a behavior that will result in injury to Zimbabwe. Okay. If you and I are seated in a pub and we are discussing politics and we say, Amdara, Zharkwita, it's not right, it's not criminal.
Yeah, but
it's not criminalized in
issue.
This bill.
It's not criminalized.
So people I heard in the House of Lords, they were saying Mnangagwa is putting a law to arrest people who criticize him. There is no way this law will be used to arrest people who criticize the president. You have to do things that are essential elements in the bill. Partake in a meeting, You have full knowledge that the meeting will result in sanctions that will injure your country. This is what it is.
But if I'm sitting with you and I say, oh, the policy with the government, we need to vote someone else in,
it's not
it's not a criminal offence. It doesn't matter what I say, as long, but if it's in a structured environment with foreign agents, with all those elements you've mentioned, then it becomes a criminal offence. I think that's very important, because I think a lot of people think that similar to how we used to have a law about criticising the president in the First Republic, and you were arrested, and very few people were convicted of it, because the judges were saying, well, you obviously have a right to say that you don't like this person and don't like person under our own constitution. Now, there are issues being raised, and I think it's back to your point about the debate that you had in Parliament in the opposition, the issue of taking on board stakeholders, the consultation process to put the bill together. Maybe talk to us about that and whether your ministry or the government was thorough in really talking to people before you came up with the legislation.
I think the consultations were done. My ministry, they do stakeholders consultation before the bill is submitted to cabinet. But thereafter, once it's before Parliament, Parliament will call members of the public to bring in their views. And the portfolio committee, in this case is the portfolio committee on justice, will go out throughout the country.
10 provinces.
Yes, doing consultation, public hearings. But people can also even bring their views to Parliament directly, or even engage their parliamentarians, so that when we debate the views of the generality of our population will be contained in the report. And when we are debating, then the minister will be able to respond and clarify issues, any grey areas. And I think that is what
that
we
was
did.
done. So as far as you're concerned, yes, everyone necessarily was consulted. If they weren't, they could have come forward and submitted anyway. In fact, I think I did do a program on this very bill over a year and a half ago. So it shows you that even then we were talking about it. Minister, I'm going to be blunt with you, and I think this is the question on most people's or critics' minds. They ask, will the bill be used by the ruling party ZANU-PF to gain advantage in the August harmonized elections by weaponizing and using the bill to cause the arrest of some opposition candidates and critics to remove them off the electoral playing field, so to speak? I think that is the critical question.
Let me answer you by saying, if you are ZANU-PF or you are MDC or CCC and you go outside the country, and you engage in behavior that is criminalized in this bill, if it's enacted, you'll be arrested.
Doesn't matter what political party you are.
Those that arrest will not ask for your party card. They will say, you undertook this, you did this, and this is contrary to section 22 of the criminal code, and then you have to answer. And you are arrested if they feel that your conduct satisfies everything that is criminalized. So it's not even about anyone. Even if it's me, tomorrow, even if it's you, and if you tomorrow the president signs and you go to South Africa, you start saying, can you cut electricity to Zimbabwe, like what somebody else did a couple of years ago? That is the conduct that is criminalized.
Doesn't matter what party I belong to,
because
who I am.
The act of encouraging them to cut electricity will result in our hospital ICU units not having electricity, and that is injuring our country.
Time for us to take a breather. After the break, we asked Zimbabwe's Minister of Justice, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs, Minister Honourable Ziyambi, is the government scared of positive criticisms of the government? I asked if citizens will still be allowed to criticize the government, the president, whatever. He did answer, but I want him to reiterate it. And if they can say what they like without fear of facing arrest. Don't go away. The Chase, Zimbabwe's premier current affairs program. We'll be right back. Hello and welcome to The Mint. I'm Andy Hodges. This is ZTN Prime, broadcasting to you.
So when COVID came,
Welcome back. You're watching The Mint live on ZTN Prime. I'm Eben Mabunda.
following the story,
What is happening on Zimbabwe's roads? How did we get here? Through red robots, basically break every road rule under the sun.
So inini ndakadhakwa nembanje dzangu ndikaenda kuchipatara ndaunorapwa ka handibatsiri
asi ndikazvishaya teteka
deeper analysis,
So, are you ready and prepared if violence rears up?
Jacob Mafume's party has taken hostage of them.
The videos are there.
Do not be drawn into the debate of discussing issues that are sub judice. He said when he grows up, he would like to be like me. A lawyer.
Just to put you in there.
Good evening and welcome to the program. Just to break the ice, what is ZNF's mandate?
To promote media freedom.
and money matters.
Coming up, Tanganda Limited is set to bring online a macadamia processing plant.
Now, Zimbabwe Stock Exchange listed company Seedco Limited has resolved to suspend indefinitely its proposal.
Every week on ZTN Prime.
Welcome back. You're watching The Chase, Zimbabwe's premier current affairs program, and this is ZTN Prime, broadcasting to you from our studios in Harare, Zimbabwe. I'm Andy Hodges. In the studio, I continue my discussion with Zimbabwe's Minister of Justice, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs, Honourable Minister Ziyambi. Minister, I've hit you on the negatives in the first segment. Let's look at the positives, because like anything, there's both sides to the coin, aren't there? The positives and the good aspects contained in the legislation. Highlight some of those.
The positive is that we want to inculcate in our people a sense of patriotism, that people, we want this law to act as a deterrent and awaken the sense that, hang on, I have to protect my country. I cannot engage in an activity that will result in injury to my country. I must be a proud Zimbabwean who works to improve or better the people of Zimbabwe, as opposed to a behavior that will result in injury to my country. If you look at other countries, their citizens are very proud to be associated with their country. They don't.
Even a country as polarized, someone says the USA, when the moment you bring the flag out, the whole nation comes out. The British flag,
Precisely.
the Germans,
Precisely.
they're all very
Yes,
nationalistic.
yes.
And one thing as well, which is interesting, is that people who want to criticize, this is what I heard from a supporter of the bill. They said, look, if you want to change something, well, we're a democracy. The ballot is there. Go and vote and
Yes,
change.
yes.
And I think that is so. The ruling party or the party in power, whether it's ZANU-PF or anybody else, has the right to impose laws as long as they have the powers in Parliament. And it's really up to the opposition if they want to change those laws to win an election.
And precisely, yeah. If you want to change the laws, if you want to change the system, you have to vote and ensure that your vote counts, and you use that vote to change the system, rather than go and engage foreigners and partake in a behavior that will result in the majority of our people suffering.
Okay. I just want you to reiterate, I know we said this before the breather, I want to reiterate that the government is not scared of citizens articulating or talking about its shortcomings or about certain people in it. The government isn't concerned by that. What the government is concerned about is this working with foreign agents deliberately. So that line is very clear in the sense, as you said, I can be sitting here with you saying, I don't like this government, I want to vote them out, but that's in me and you talking in a location. But so there is a clear, defined line, as you stated, between me and you just having a beer talk, then
Precisely.
other people actually
Yes.
deliberately saying,
Yes.
we want sanctions, we want trade, and so forth.
Yes.
Okay, that is very clear.
It's
so the
very
government
clear.
is not scared of criticism.
The government is not scared of criticism. In fact, one of the positives about the coming in of the Second Republic, even in areas where it was difficult for opposition to penetrate and talk openly, you hear them saying, Vamnangagwa vakatibvumira, we are now doing whatever we want. Those are the positives that came out of the process. So the bill does not criminalize criticizing the president.
Okay.
The bill is about a certain behavior that you
damages
do,
the nation.
that damages the nation,
Okay,
not
I got
the
you.
person of the president.
What about arguments that the bill contradicts the President Mnangagwa's promise to expand freedoms? What would you say to that?
In fact, I have earlier alluded that the very people who are saying that the president is restricting the democratic space are actually saying it out there that now we can campaign freely, as opposed to what used to happen. It's their capability of campaigning that is limiting them, not the space.
Okay.
The bill, the president is not limiting freedoms. In fact, and if I can tell you, when our president came in, he started complying with state party reports to UN, to African Union, and all the reports are now up to date.
Okay.
It shows that he's not scared to go out there and say, this is what
Being
my country is
transparent.
doing, is very transparent. This is what we are doing in Zimbabwe in terms of our state party reporting to the United Nations human rights. We attend religiously. We make sure our reports are up to date to the African Charter on Human Rights. We do the same. So we are free. We allow anyone to interrogate what we say, to criticize.
But there's a point.
Yes, but
That's what
there's
you're
a
saying,
point. Yes.
where that freedom has a limit.
As a limit.
Okay.
You cannot then say, I have freedom
Just do whatever.
to
I can be a
bomb
terrorist if I
hospital.
want.
I can
yeah.
be a terrorist if I want. That is not acceptable.
Okay. Now, there's one area where I know personally the government has been making huge strides, and that is promoting freedom of the media. And the concern by critics and commentators that this bill may actually, in a way, constrain that because what can the media report or not report? I'm not sure if that's clearly defined in the bill. Can this restrict the media from being maybe scared to say certain things or use certain words or wording that could get them in trouble under this bill?
Not at all. The bill will not interfere with the work of the media. The media can still do their work, criticize the president, criticize government. What we are criminalizing is conduct that will result in injury.
So can the media report on these meetings being held?
That's their job.
They can say there was a meeting held
There
in
was a
Joburg,
meeting,
they
yes.
discussed sanctions, such and such was there,
It's the duty
blah, 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 blah.
It's the duty of the media to expose so
Okay.
that everyone can know that Ziyambi was in Joburg attending a meeting
To change the government.
to
something,
change the
something.
government
Okay.
through a trade boycott
Right.
or sanctions or
Can
by
it-
way
can-
of training bandits.
Can the media take a position on that?
Yes.
Is that legal or illegal? If the media says Ziyambi was there, and in fact it's something that our publication supports, is that illegal?
If you support
As
conduct
a media,
that will as
somebody
a
else.
media house
Okay.
that will result
In harm.
to your country, then that media house is
Okay.
a problem.
Okay, got you. All right. Now, another bone of contentions that is raised is the penalties to be imposed on offenders. Some legal experts say, and maybe you can explain this to us, that some of the penalties are unconstitutional.
We discussed this in Parliament. The opposition have several lawyers. They tried to bring in that line of argument. The sentence is level 12, 10 years in prison. if you are a citizen by registration, depending on the severity, we can cancel the citizenship, and when that is cancelled, you can be deported. But there is a provision in the law that if cancelling the citizenship will render you stateless, then we will not cancel. We'll send you to jail.
But the idea is to have punitive. I mean, 10 years is quite long, isn't it?
I wanted even a longer jail term. If you injure the sovereignty or the national interest, you are affecting a lot of people. You don't deserve to stay outside for.
So you were a hawk.
Yes, yes. But it was moderated, and we agreed on 10 years. But surely, when several people have lost their livelihoods because of sanctions, some have lost their lives because of sanctions, and we sometimes we take it lightly. But I believe that it's such a serious offence.
So where was the unconstitutionality that's being raised then?
They were saying that it's unconstitutional because you cannot render someone stateless, or you can't.
Oh, okay. On that regard.
Yes,
but the level of 12 fine and so forth.
But we then said if you are a Zimbabwean citizen by birth or descent, we can't cancel your citizenship.
So you negotiate, you listen to the opposition, and you put in their ideas. I think that's also an important point to raise. When you debated this in Parliament, opposition had the chance to put their views in, and if their views were acceptable, and you took them and put them in there. It wasn't, this is our bill, take it or leave it.
No.
Okay. Now, I want to talk about another bill, Minister, apart from the patriotic bill, if I can call it that. There's also the Private Voluntary Organizations, or PVO Amendment Bill, which again is awaiting the President's signature. This has generated heated debate in the NGOs, CSOs, particularly in that sort of developmental sector. Again, the criticism is that the government is using the PVO Amendment Bill to stifle the work of NGOs, to determine which NGOs can work in the country, to determine the kind of work they can do. Your perspective on this amendment. I mean, what actually is the amendment made for, and what does it really mean to NGOs?
Thank you on that. The PVO bill, the intention of government, which is what the practice world over is, you cannot allow charitable giving to go uncontrolled. You need to control it, largely because if it's not controlled, it can be a conduit for financing terrorism or money laundering, and also for better coordination of government activities. So what the bill is simply saying is, if you are an NGO receiving public funds to finance your organization, you need to be registered. When you are registered, you need to stick to the core business that you registered.
You submit a plan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So if, for instance, if you are into water and sanitation services, you cannot then, if you are receiving money for that, divert that money to political lobbying.
Or anything else,
or anything
outside
else,
of water and
outside
sanitation.
What you,
even if it was renewable energy,
yes,
it's not water and sanitation.
Yes,
so, okay.
Yes. So you need to stick to the plan and to what you undertook to use the money for.
Okay.
So there is need to control that, and this is basically the main thrust of the.
So it isn't about where the money is coming from, because one of the arguments I had, one of the discussions I had with another minister was that if the money is coming from, say, America, who's seen as a possible enemy of the state, they don't like that. But if it's coming from China, maybe that NGO will be allowed. That isn't the case at all.
No,
it doesn't matter the source of the funds.
The source of the funds.
Okay.
The NGO has to be registered, declare where the money is coming from, what the money is supposed to be used for, and the money must be used for that particular purpose.
And it's audited, of course. There's an audit process.
Yes.
So the NGOs then, what is their argument? Is their argument we must do whatever we want?
The argument is, if I decide that I want to shift from water and sanitation, to
whatever else.
renewable energy, I must be allowed to do that without notifying the registrar of PVOs. And they believe that is too restrictive for them to put up a plan and report to the registrar that this is what we are doing, and then
ask for a change.
Yes.
Because if they ask for a change, they'd have to go through the whole process again,
yes,
explain, put in a
yes,
plan, and
yes,
so forth.
yes.
And then the government will audit the plan
Yes,
and make sure that they've stuck
precisely.
to the plan and that's
Yes,
been spent.
yes.
Okay, so it isn't about monitoring regime change agents
No,
in the NGO
no,
sector.
no.
This is about you're an NGO. Now, you talked about coordinating government's planning. You're saying that this allows you to understand what NGOs are doing in the economy and how it
Yes.
buttresses about its policies. Is that explain that?
Do you know, we do not want, government wants a coordinated approach to the work of NGOs, so that if we have an NGO working in Zimba, for instance, doing a specific project there, government do not have to go there and replicate that project. They then go to another district because they are fully aware that there is an NGO
Doing that.
that is doing that in that particular admin district, authorized by government.
Okay.
So this will allow equitable distribution of resources and ensure that
An efficient use of
and
resources.
efficient use of resources.
Okay, all right. Now, talking about that PVO bill in particular, did you go out there and speak to NGOs? Did you get their views? Did you speak to them for them to understand what was behind
yes,
it? Because it's always good that people need to communicate. Because you say listening government, talking government.
Yes. I went, I had a full day, half a day, I think, at Crown Plaza, where I had a meeting with the representatives of NGOs.
Nango and those.
Yes, we went through the bill, and they would point out there, Minister, can you do this? We took some of their views.
Okay.
I actually thanked them when I did my second reading speech in Parliament to say that
they had input into this.
Yes, they had an input.
All right.
We acknowledge the work that they are doing, so we engage them.
Mr. I've got two final questions for you. The first one, of course, is just very briefly, you obviously had a lot of laws to align to the new constitution. I believe it was 200 plus, I remember the number. How far away are you on that? And of course, one of my favorite bills that I really would like to get seen passed is Whistleblower Protection Act, because I believe that will go a long way in fighting corruption. So talk about how far you are on the bills to align us, and also where is this Whistleblower Protection Act that we've been waiting many years for?
Thank you very much. On the work of aligning our laws, we have a committee headed by the Attorney General that is tasked at looking at all our laws and identifying those that need alignment. But the work of alignment will always be an ongoing process. But I believe that at this stage we have done a lot. We came up with a general laws amendment. We have
the majority are done.
The majority are done.
Okay.
I think we now under 20 are left.
Okay.
Regarding the Whistleblowers Act, I think all the cabinet processes have been done and the approval was given, and the bill was with the Attorney General. They were drafting that bill. Now we are going for elections, but I hope it is
the next Parliament.
The next Parliament.
So I'm hoping you'll put it.
September.
So the President hopes you'll put it in his agenda when he announces the
legislative agenda. When we
I
have,
hope so, Minister, because I think everybody agrees that that will really go a long way. And of course, fighting corruption is the plank of the government at the moment. Minister, let me get your final thoughts. Should citizens be concerned that the government is passing laws to stifle their freedoms? Should they be concerned that the bills awaiting presidential assent are weapons in ZANU-PF's arsenal to be used to stifle opposition and critics before the harmonized elections? Should they be concerned, in short, that these are self-serving pieces of legislation that have no place in a democracy such as ours, or they shouldn't be concerned at all?
Our citizens should not be concerned at all. The laws that are being put are for the good governance of Zimbabweans and are for the protection of our national sovereignty and our national interests. And the bills that are being put will ensure that as a nation we will protect ourselves from external manipulation.
So it's not about ZANU-PF at all.
These bills have nothing about ZANU-PF. That's the reason why when we were in Parliament, we had a constructive debate, contributions from the opposition. In fact, the form in which the bills are now, there was so much input from members of the opposition to an extent that save that they will be politically posturing. They cannot disown the bills as not being part of them because the majority of the bills were passed by consensus.
We've come to the end of the chase tonight. I'd like to thank my guest, Zimbabwe's Minister of Justice, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs, Honourable Minister Ziyambi. Minister, as usual, thank you for appearing on The Chase, sir. Well, that's it, as I said, for tonight's episode of The Chase. I'm Andy Hodges. Goodbye, good night, and please, you all be safe.